The rain had been falling over Manhattan since late afternoon, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon and blurred headlights. By 9 o'clock, the downpour had softened into a steady drizzle that painted everything with a glossy sheen. The kind of night where the city felt both alive and melancholic, where every storefront window glowed like a promise of warmth against the November cold. Inside Carmelo's, an upscale Italian restaurant nestled between 5th and Madison Avenue, the atmosphere was entirely different from the weather outside. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across white tablecloths, and the soft murmur of conversation mixed with the gentle clinking of silverware on fine china. The air smelled of fresh basil, garlic, and expensive wine. This was the kind of establishment where businessmen closed deals, where politicians dined discreetly, and where certain people came because they knew the owner understood the value of privacy. Vincent Russo sat at his usual corner table, the one with a clear view of both entrances and enough distance from other diners to ensure his conversations remained his own. He was 42 years old, though his eyes carried the weight of someone who had lived twice that long. His dark hair was perfectly styled, touched with gray at the temples that only added to his commanding presence. He wore a charcoal suit that had been tailored to perfection, a white shirt open at the collar, and a watch that cost more than most people's cars. To anyone watching, he appeared relaxed, a successful businessman enjoying a quiet dinner. But those who knew him understood that Vincent Russo was never truly relaxed. His posture, while casual, allowed for quick movement. His eyes, dark and calculating, constantly scanned the room. His hands, scarred across the knuckles in ways that told stories he never spoke aloud, rested on the table in a deceptively loose arrangement. "Mr. Russo, your usual Chianti?" The sommelier approached with practiced deference. "Not tonight, Anthony, just water, sparkling." The sommelier nodded and retreated. Vincent preferred to keep his mind sharp, especially on nights when business discussions might turn delicate. Tonight he was expecting Marco Bellini, a construction company owner who had been late on payments for protection services. It would be a conversation, nothing more. Vincent had learned long ago that the threat of consequences was often more effective than the consequences themselves. As he waited, Vincent's fingers unconsciously traced the edge of his left ribs, where an old injury still ached when the weather turned cold. 15 years ago, a rival had gotten too close with a blade during a territorial dispute in Brooklyn. The physical wound had healed, but it had left a permanent reminder, a raised scar that ran from his rib cage to his lower back, and a deep tissue injury that throbbed whenever pressure or cold affected it. He caught himself touching it and stopped. Showing weakness, even to himself, was a habit he'd long since trained away. The restaurant door opened, letting in a gust of damp air and the sound of traffic, but it wasn't Marco Bellini who entered. Instead, a young woman rushed through, shaking droplets from her dark hair and apologizing to the hostess for being late. Vincent watched with detached interest as she hurried toward the back, clearly a staff member running behind schedule. "I'm so sorry, Maria," the young woman was saying breathlessly to the hostess. "The subway was delayed because of flooding on the tracks. I ran the last 4 blocks. It's fine, Emma, it's fine. Catch your breath. Table 7 needs attention, and Mr. Russo's section is yours tonight." Paolo called in sick. Vincent saw the young woman, Emma, pause for just a moment, her eyes flicking toward his corner table. Even from this distance he could see the slight tension that entered her shoulders. So she knew who he was. Most of the staff did, even if they pretended otherwise. Emma Chen was 26 years old, though the exhaustion in her eyes sometimes made her look older. She had moved to New York from San Francisco 3 years ago with dreams of becoming a child psychologist, armed with a bachelor's degree and enough optimism to fuel a small city. Reality had been less accommodating. Graduate school was expensive. Her mother's medical bills were more expensive. Her younger brother's college tuition was bleeding her dry, so she worked. During the day, she was a teaching assistant at a public elementary school in Queens. 4 evenings a week, she waited tables at Carmelo's, where the tips were good enough to make the exhaustion worthwhile. On her 2 days off, she worked morning shifts at a coffee shop in the East Village. She didn't complain. Complaining changed nothing. She simply did what needed to be done, one day at a time, telling herself that eventually things would align. Eventually, she'd save enough. Eventually, her mother would be stable. Eventually, her brother would graduate. Eventually. Tonight, she quickly changed into her black uniform, a simple fitted shirt and slacks that were professional without being ostentatious, and pulled her dark hair back into a neat ponytail. Her feet already hurt from running and she hadn't even started her shift. She took a breath, fixed her smile, and walked onto the floor. Table 7 was a couple celebrating an anniversary. Easy. She took their order with genuine warmth, recommended the ossobuco, and moved efficiently to her next tables. The rhythm of service was something she'd mastered. Anticipate needs, stay invisible until needed, read people's moods, adjust accordingly. Then she approached table 12, Vincent Russo's table. "Good evening, Mr. Russo. Can I get you started with anything while you wait?" Her voice was professional, friendly, but not familiar. Vincent glanced up and for a moment their eyes met. Hers were dark brown, almost black, and held an interesting quality. They were tired but not defeated. There was a resilience in her gaze that he recognized, the look of someone who had learned to endure. Sparkling water, slice of lemon. "Of course, I'll have that right out for you." She moved away, and Vincent found himself watching her work. She was efficient, graceful even, despite the obvious fatigue. She smiled at her customers with what seemed like genuine warmth, not the forced hospitality that some servers adopted. When a child at table 9 dropped his fork, she was there immediately with a clean one and a conspiratorial wink that made the boy giggle. Interesting. In Vincent's world, people usually showed their true selves under pressure. They became cruel, or obsequious, or calculating. This young woman just seemed kind. It was almost suspicious in its simplicity. Emma returned with his water, placing it carefully on the table. "Your guest called Mr. Russo. He's running about 20 minutes late. Traffic from Brooklyn. He asked if you wanted to order an appetizer while you wait." Vincent nodded. "The bruschetta. And tell the kitchen not to rush it." "Absolutely." As she turned to leave, a commotion erupted from table 4. A businessman had apparently had too much wine and was being loud about his opinions on city politics. His companion was trying to quiet him, embarrassed. The man stood abruptly, gesturing wildly, and knocked into Emma as she passed. It happened in slow motion and too fast at the same time. Emma stumbled backward, trying to catch her balance. Her tray, empty, thankfully, flew from her hands. She twisted, reaching out for anything to steady herself, and her hand pressed firmly against Vincent's left side as she caught herself against his table. The pressure hit directly on the old wound. Vincent flinched, actually flinched. His body tensed, his jaw clenched, and for a fraction of a second pain flashed across his face before he could mask it. His hand instinctively moved to his ribs, a protective gesture he hadn't made in years. Emma froze, her hand still against his side. She felt the tension in his body, saw the tightness around his eyes, and her nursing instincts, honed from 3 years of caring for her mother, kicked in immediately. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said quickly, pulling her hand back. But instead of just apologizing and fleeing, she did something unexpected. She looked at him with genuine concern. "Are you hurt? Did something?" "I'm fine." Vincent's voice was controlled, but there was an edge to it. Not anger at her, but at himself for showing weakness. Emma didn't miss the way he was holding his side, the careful way he was breathing. "You're not fine. I felt there's an injury there. An old one from the way you reacted." Vincent stared at her, genuinely surprised. Most people, upon realizing they'd touched him unwelcomely, would have scrambled away with terrified apologies. She was still standing there, concerned, looking at him like he was any other person who might be in pain. "I said I'm fine," he repeated, but his tone had lost its edge. "Okay," Emma said softly. Then to his complete astonishment she added, "But if you need ice or if it starts bothering you more, please let me know. Rib injuries can be tricky, especially old ones. The cold weather doesn't help." Before he could respond, she was addressing the drunk businessman, her voice firm but not unkind. "Sir, I think you've had enough for tonight. Let me call you a car." The man blustered, but Emma handled it with practiced ease, nodding to the hostess to call for a taxi while steering the situation toward a peaceful resolution. Within minutes, the man was being helped into a car by his mortified companion, and the restaurant had returned to its previous calm. Vincent watched the entire exchange with fascination. She had diffused the situation without drama, without involving management or security. She had taken control quietly and effectively. When Emma returned to check on him, she carried his bruschetta and a small ice pack wrapped in a cloth napkin. "I'm not supposed to bring ice packs to tables," she said with a slight smile, setting down the appetizer. "But I figured you'd probably be too stubborn to ask for one, and that rib is going to bother you all night if you don't address it now." She placed the ice pack on the table beside his plate. 15 minutes on, 15 off, if you want to use it. She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. And I really am sorry. I should have been more aware of my surroundings. Vincent looked at the ice pack, then at her. What's your name? Emma. Emma Chen. You always bring medical advice with the appetizers, Emma. A genuine smile touched her lips. Only when someone's trying to pretend they're not in pain. My mother has chronic arthritis. I've gotten good at reading people's discomfort. And you just assume I want help? No, Emma said simply. I assume you're human. And humans in pain usually appreciate kindness, even if they're not used to asking for it. With that, she moved to her other tables, leaving Vincent staring after her with an expression that hadn't crossed his face in years. Complete bewilderment. He looked down at the ice pack. It was presumptuous of her to bring it. It was unprofessional, technically. He picked it up and pressed it against his side, feeling the immediate relief of cold against the deep ache. Damn. When was the last time someone had noticed he was in pain? When was the last time anyone had cared enough to do something about it without being asked? His own men wouldn't dare mention if they saw him wince. His doctor provided treatment when summoned, nothing more. And this waitress, this complete stranger who had every reason to fear him, had brought him ice and gentle advice like it was the most natural thing in the world. Vincent found himself watching her again as she worked. She moved with purpose, but also with an attentiveness to detail that spoke of someone who genuinely cared about doing things well. When an elderly woman at table 6 struggled to read the menu in the dim light, Emma quietly brought a small reading lamp from the hostess stand. When a young couple seemed to be on a tight budget, Vincent heard her steer them toward the lunch portions, which were more affordable, but not on the dinner menu. A small kindness that probably cost her a larger tip. Marco Bellini arrived 15 minutes later, full of apologies about the traffic. Vincent listened to his explanations about delayed payments with half his attention. Yes, there were legitimate construction delays. Yes, the city permits had taken longer than expected. Yes, payment would be made by the end of the week. Make it happen, Marco. I don't like repeating myself. Of course, Mr. Russo. Of course, you have my word. They shared a meal, discussed mutual acquaintances, and parted professionally. It was all routine, all familiar. Vincent had had 1,000 conversations like this in 100 different restaurants over 2 decades of business. But throughout the dinner, he was distracted. His eyes kept finding Emma as she moved through the restaurant. He noticed how she remembered details. The elderly woman's preference for warm water instead of cold. The young couple's request for the check to be split. She was attentive without being intrusive, present without being overbearing. And she had touched his wound with gentle concern, not with fear or disgust or curiosity about the violence that had caused it. She had seen pain and responded with compassion. Simple, uncomplicated, honest. When Marco left, Vincent remained at his table, nursing an espresso he didn't particularly want. Emma approached to clear the plates. Can I get you anything else, Mr. Russo? The ice helped. Thank you. Emma's face brightened with a genuine smile that transformed her tired features. I'm glad. Old injuries can be stubborn. How's your mother? The question surprised him as much as it clearly surprised her. She's managing. Thank you for asking. The arthritis. You said she has arthritis. Yes. Rheumatoid. Some days are better than others. Vincent nodded slowly. My aunt had the same. I remember watching her hands swell on cold days. She used to say her joints could predict rain better than any weather forecast. That's exactly what my mom says, Emma said with a soft laugh. She called me this morning to tell me it was going to rain, even though the forecast said clear skies. She was right. She always is. There was a moment of comfortable silence, which was strange in itself. Vincent wasn't used to comfortable silences with strangers. Silence in his world usually meant calculation, threat assessment, strategic planning. What time does your shift end? He asked. Emma's expression became cautious. Around midnight. Why? It's late. The subway can be unpredictable at that hour. I'll be fine. I do this 4 times a week. I know, but humor me. My driver can take you home. It's on our way. Mr. Russo, I appreciate the offer, but I don't think... It's not an offer with conditions, Vincent interrupted gently. You showed me kindness tonight. Let me return it. Simple as that. Emma studied him for a long moment. He could see her weighing options, calculating risk, trying to determine if there was an angle she was missing. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. That's very kind. I'll wait. And he did. Vincent Russo, who had business to attend to, calls to make, territory to oversee, sat in that corner booth for another 2.5 hours, reading reports on his phone and occasionally ordering coffee he didn't drink. The restaurant staff noticed, of course. The hostess exchanged glances with the manager. The other servers whispered quietly. Everyone knew who Vincent Russo was, at least in general terms. Nobody knew exactly what he did, but they understood he was powerful, that he commanded respect, that crossing him would be unwise. But watching him sit there, patient and calm, waiting to give their colleague a ride home, they saw something different, something almost human. Emma finished her shift, counting out her tips and helping the closing staff with final tasks. When she emerged from the back in her street clothes, jeans, a worn peacoat and a scarf that had seen better days, Vincent was standing by the door. "Ready?" She nodded, suddenly nervous. "You really didn't have to wait." "I know." Outside, a black Mercedes waited at the curb, its engine running. The driver, a stocky man with kind eyes named Thomas, opened the rear door without comment. Vincent gestured for Emma to enter first, then slid in beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Where to?" Thomas asked. Emma gave an address in Queens, a modest neighborhood, safe but not affluent. The drive took 40 minutes through mostly empty streets, the city's nighttime rhythm slow and hypnotic. They didn't speak much during the ride. Emma stared out the window, watching the familiar landmarks pass, the bodega where she bought groceries, the park where she sometimes ate lunch, the library where she borrowed books she couldn't afford to buy. Vincent watched her watching the city, and something in his chest felt strange. When was the last time he'd noticed the small details of ordinary life? When had he stopped seeing the beauty in mundane routines? His world was filled with luxury, but it was also filled with constant vigilance, with strategies and countermoves, with the weight of decisions that affected dozens of people. This young woman beside him worked 3 jobs, cared for her mother, supported her brother, and still found the compassion to bring ice to a stranger in pain. She lived in a different world than he did, one where kindness wasn't strategic but simply natural. When they reached her building, a modest 5-story walk-up with tired bricks and flower boxes that someone was trying to keep alive, Emma turned to him. "Thank you, Mr. Russo. This was incredibly kind." "Vincent, and you're welcome." She hesitated, her hand on the door handle. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. I may not answer." "The injury. How long have you had it?" 15 years. "Why?" "Because you've been compensating for it. The way you sit, the way you move your left arm, you're protecting it constantly. That kind of chronic tension can cause other problems. Shoulder issues, back pain, tension headaches." Vincent stared at her. "You got all that from one accidental touch?" "I got it from watching you all evening. Old pain patterns become visible if you know what to look for." She smiled softly. "I'm not trying to pry. I know what it's like to watch someone you care about hurt and not be able to fix it. With my mom. So when I see someone in pain, I want to help, even if it's just information. No one's ever..." Vincent started, then stopped. He didn't know how to finish that sentence. No one's ever cared? No one's ever noticed? No one's ever been this gentle? All of it was true. Emma seemed to understand without him finishing. "Well, good night, Vincent. Thank you again for the ride." She slipped out of the car and walked toward her building, her figure disappearing into the warm glow of the entrance light. Vincent sat in the quiet car for a long moment. "Home, sir?" Thomas asked gently. "Yes, home." As they drove back toward Manhattan, Vincent touched his ribs again, but this time the gesture wasn't protective. It was contemplative. No one's ever been this gentle. The words echoed in his mind all the way home, and later, as he stood in his penthouse overlooking the glittering city, he found himself thinking about kind eyes and warm concern, and the strange feeling of being seen as a person, not a position. It was unsettling. It was dangerous. It was something he absolutely should not pursue. Vincent Russo was known for his strategic mind, his ability to assess situations and make optimal decisions. But as he stared out at the city lights, he knew with absolute certainty that he would be returning to Carmelo's. Soon, very soon, and he knew with equal certainty that this was possibly the worst decision he had ever made, but perhaps also the most honest. 3 days passed before Vincent returned to Carmelo's, though he thought about it every single day. He told himself it was ridiculous. He was a man who controlled territories, who made decisions that affected hundreds of people, who had built an empire on careful calculation and strategic thinking. Getting distracted by a waitress who had shown him basic human kindness was illogical at best, dangerous at worst. But on Thursday evening, he found himself walking through the restaurant doors at exactly 8:30, the time when he knew Emma's shift would be in full swing. Maria, the hostess, greeted him with her usual professional warmth. "Good evening, Mr. Russo. Your regular table?" "Yes, and Maria, make sure Emma handles my section tonight." If Maria found the request unusual, she didn't show it. "Of course, sir. Right this way." Vincent settled into his corner booth, the same one from Monday night. The restaurant was busier tonight. Thursday was when the pre-weekend crowd began filtering in, professionals celebrating the approaching end of their work week, couples on date nights, small groups of friends gathering over wine and pasta. He watched Emma work. She was at table 8, laughing at something an elderly gentleman was saying, her face animated and genuine. There was no pretense in her interactions, no calculation. She simply engaged with people as if they mattered, because to her they clearly did. When she finally noticed him, he saw the brief moment of surprise cross her features before she composed herself and approached his table. "Good evening, Mr. Russo. Back so soon?" "Vincent," he corrected. "And yes, the food is good here." A slight smile played at her lips. "Just the food?" He found himself matching her smile, something that felt foreign on his face. "The service isn't bad either." "High praise. Can I start you with something to drink?" "Red wine tonight, whatever you recommend." Emma's eyebrows rose slightly. "You trust my recommendation?" "You were right about the ice. I'm willing to take another chance." She studied him for a moment, and he had the distinct impression she was seeing past the expensive suit and controlled demeanor to something underneath. "I'll bring you something special. Give me a few minutes." She returned with a bottle he didn't recognize, pouring a small amount for him to taste. "This is from a small vineyard in Tuscany. The owner is the chef's cousin. It's not on the menu, but it's incredible. Complex but not overwhelming, with notes of cherry and a slight earthiness that pairs perfectly with our mushroom risotto." Vincent tasted it. She was right. It was exceptional. "How do you know so much about wine?" "I thought you were studying psychology." "I am, or I was." On pause at the moment, she poured his glass. "But I've been working here for 2 years. You pick things up. Plus, I like learning about things that bring people joy. Wine does that. Food does that. Small moments of pleasure in difficult days. That's a very optimistic perspective." "Optimistic or necessary?" Emma countered gently. "Some days you have to find the small joys, or the big struggles will drown you." Before Vincent could respond, she was called away to another table, but her words stayed with him. When had he last looked for small joys? His life was structured around control, power, territory. Joy wasn't a factor he calculated into his decisions. Throughout the evening, Vincent found himself timing his needs, water refills, questions about the menu, dessert considerations, to coincide with moments when Emma was nearby. Each conversation was brief, professional on the surface, but underneath, he sensed something building. A connection, tentative and strange, like two people learning a new language together. "How's your mother?" he asked when she brought his entree. "Having a good week, actually. The new medication seems to be helping." Emma's face brightened. She was able to hold her paintbrush yesterday. She used to paint before the arthritis got bad. It's been months since she could grip anything that required fine motor control. That must have made her happy. It made us both happy. Sometimes I forget that she was a person with passions and dreams before she became my patient. Emma's voice carried a note of gentle sadness. The illness takes so much. It's good to see pieces of who she was coming back. Even briefly, Vincent understood that more than he could express. He had watched his own mother fade after his father's death, watched her become a shadow of the vibrant woman who had once filled their small Brooklyn apartment with music and laughter. Grief and hardship changed people, carved away parts of them until what remained was someone different, someone diminished. "She's lucky to have you," he said quietly. Emma met his eyes, and for a moment, the busy restaurant faded away. "I'm lucky to have her. She taught me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up day after day even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired. That's a hard lesson. The important ones usually are." She moved to her next table and Vincent sat with the weight of her words. Getting back up day after day. He had built his entire life on strength, on never showing weakness, on being the immovable object that others broke themselves against. But was that the same thing? Or had he simply learned to stop falling by never allowing himself to be in a position where falling was possible? When Emma returned with dessert, tiramisu he hadn't ordered but somehow knew he would want, she lingered for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice lower, more personal. "You can ask. Why do you sit alone? A man like you, I assume you have associates, friends, people who would join you." Vincent considered the question. The honest answer was complicated. Sometimes solitude is safer than company. Safer for you or for them? He looked up at her sharply, surprised by her perceptiveness. Both. Emma nodded slowly, as if she understood more than he was saying. That sounds lonely. Lonely and safe often go together. They don't have to, she said softly. Then, as if realizing she had crossed some invisible line, she straightened. "I should check on my other tables. Enjoy the tiramisu." Vincent watched her go, his mind churning. She had no idea who he really was, what he really did. She saw him as a businessman, someone powerful, but ultimately legitimate. If she knew the truth, the extent of his organization, the gray areas he operated in, the compromises he made daily, would she still bring him ice for his injuries? Would she still speak to him with that gentle directness? Probably not. That should have been the end of it. Vincent should have finished his meal, left a generous tip, and never returned. Getting involved with someone from outside his world was a complication he didn't need. It was selfish and potentially dangerous for her. But Thursday became Friday, and Friday became Saturday, and by Sunday evening, Vincent found himself once again walking through Carmelo's doors. This pattern continued for 2 weeks. He came every few days, always requesting Emma's section, always sitting at the same corner table. They talked in brief snatches between her duties, about books, about the city, about small observations that revealed character without revealing secrets. He learned that she had moved to New York with her best friend from college, but the friend had gotten married and moved to Boston, leaving Emma feeling isolated in a city of millions. He learned that she spoke Mandarin fluently, having grown up in a bilingual household and sometimes worked as a volunteer translator at a community health clinic. He learned that she loved old movies, the classics from the 40s and 50s, because they reminded her of watching television with her grandmother before she passed away. She learned that he had grown up in Brooklyn, that he had lost his father young, that he appreciated architecture and could spend hours walking through the city noticing details in old buildings that most people overlooked. She learned that he read extensively, history, philosophy, occasionally poetry, though he'd never admit that to anyone else. She learned that beneath the controlled exterior was someone who noticed things, who thought deeply, who carried weights she couldn't quite identify but could sense were there. What she didn't learn was what he actually did. Vincent was careful about that. He spoke in generalities about business and investments and various interests. It wasn't lying exactly, more like selective truth-telling. On the Tuesday of the 3rd week, something shifted. Vincent arrived to find Emma looking exhausted in a way that went beyond her usual end-of-day tiredness. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her smile, while present, didn't reach her eyes. "Rough day?" he asked when she brought his water. "Rough week. Rough month, honestly." She tried to wave it off. "But that's not your concern. What can I get you for dinner?" "Emma, sit down." She glanced around nervously. "I can't. I'm working. 30 seconds, please." Something in his voice made her comply. She slid into the booth across from him, her hands immediately moving to fidget with the edge of her apron, a nervous gesture he'd noticed she did when stressed. "What happened?" "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." Emma laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "My brother called. He's struggling in his classes, might lose his scholarship. My mom had a bad fall yesterday. She's okay, but it scared both of us. The school where I work is facing budget cuts, which means my teaching assistant position might be eliminated, and my landlord raised the rent. Again." She said it all in a rush, as if holding it in was no longer possible. Then she seemed to realize who she was talking to and straightened up quickly. "I'm sorry, that was completely inappropriate. You're a customer, not my therapist. I'm also someone who asked. And for what it's worth, I'd like to think I'm something closer to a friend than a customer at this point." Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and Vincent saw the moment she decided to be honest. "Are we? Friends? I'd like to be." "That's unexpected." "Why?" "Because you're you and I'm me, and we exist in completely different worlds. You wear suits that cost more than my monthly rent. You have drivers and people who call you sir with genuine respect, not just professional courtesy. I work 3 jobs and barely keep my head above water. And you think that means we can't be friends? I think it means we live different realities." Emma's voice was soft but firm. I don't say that with judgment, it's just true. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he did something impulsive, something that went against every principle of compartmentalization he'd spent decades perfecting. He reached across the table and gently took her hand. Different circumstances don't mean different humanity. You're tired, you're overwhelmed, and you're trying to hold together the lives of people you love while barely holding together your own. I understand that more than you know. Emma's eyes widened slightly at the contact, but she didn't pull away. How could you possibly understand that? No offense, but you don't look like someone who's ever struggled to make rent. Not anymore. But I wasn't always this. He gestured vaguely at himself, his suit, the expensive watch. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn with my mother and 2 sisters after my father died. I was 14. I watched my mother work 3 jobs, just like you. I watched her break herself to keep us fed and housed. I understand what it means to be tired in your bones, to feel like you're one disaster away from everything falling apart. What changed? Emma asked quietly. I found opportunities. I worked hard. I made choices. All true, if incomplete. And I got lucky in some ways. And unlucky in others? She was looking at his left side, where she knew the old injury resided. Yes, and unlucky in others. They sat like that for a moment, hands connected across the table. 2 people from different worlds finding unexpected common ground. Then Emma's manager called her name, and the spell broke. I have to go, she said, reluctantly withdrawing her hand. I know. But Emma, about your brother's scholarship, what school? NYU. He's a sophomore, engineering. Why? Just curious. Vincent filed the information away. And the fall your mother took. Is she seeing a good doctor? She sees someone at the community health center. They're overworked, but they try. Would she be open to a second opinion? I know some people. Emma's expression became guarded. Vincent, I appreciate the thought, but I can't accept. It's not charity. It's a friend making an introduction, that's all. My aunt's rheumatologist is one of the best in the city. He might have insights her current doctor hasn't considered. He pulled out his phone, typed quickly, and showed her the screen. That's his office number. Tell them Vincent Russo referred you. They'll make room in his schedule. This is too much. It's a phone number. What you do with it is your choice. Emma stared at the number, conflict clear on her face. Finally, she pulled out her own phone and took a picture of the screen. Thank you, I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She left to attend to her tables, and Vincent sat back, his mind already working. By the time his meal arrived, he had made 3 phone calls. The first was to Dr. Raymond Chen, the rheumatologist he'd mentioned. Vincent had helped the doctor's son with a legal problem years ago. Nothing serious, just a misunderstanding that Vincent's lawyer had resolved quickly. Dr. Chen still felt he owed Vincent a debt. Raymond, Vincent Russo, I need a favor. A friend's mother needs to be seen. Rheumatoid arthritis, advanced. Current treatment isn't working well. Can you fit her in? For you? Of course. Have them call my private line. I'll make sure she's seen within the week. The second call was to Marcus Webb, who ran a private scholarship fund that Vincent had been donating to anonymously for years. Marcus, I need information on a student at NYU. Engineering program, sophomore, name is, He realized he didn't know Emma's brother's name. He'd have to find that out. I'll send you details. If he's at risk of losing his scholarship due to grades, I want to know what kind of support is available. The third call was to Tony Castellano, who owned half the rental properties in Queens. Tony, I need information on a building. Vincent gave Emma's address. I want to know who owns it, what the rent situation is, and whether there have been any documented problems with the property. Planning to buy it? Tony asked, curious. Maybe. Or maybe I just want information. You got it. I'll have something by tomorrow. Vincent hung up feeling both satisfied and troubled. He was crossing lines he'd kept firmly in place for years. He didn't get personally involved in people's lives. He didn't use his resources for individual acts of kindness. It was inefficient, it created obligations, it opened doors to emotional complications, but he couldn't seem to stop himself. Emma returned to check on him later in the evening, her professional mask back in place but gratitude evident in her eyes. Thank you. For the referral. For listening. For being kind. You were kind to me first. I'm just returning the favor. Somehow, I think your return favors are worth more than ice packs, she said with a slight smile. Value is subjective. Your ice pack meant more to me than you know. As the evening wore on, Vincent found himself studying Emma with new understanding. She carried her burdens with grace, never complaining to her customers, never letting her exhaustion affect her service. She was strong in ways that had nothing to do with power or control, and everything to do with resilience and determination. It reminded him of his mother. It reminded him of who he had been before his world had hardened him. When the restaurant finally closed and Emma finished her shift, Vincent was waiting by the door, as had become his pattern over the past weeks. "You don't have to keep doing this," Emma said as they settled into the car, "giving me rides home. I know, but the subway is unreliable this late and I worry." "You worry about me?" There was surprise in her voice. "Yes. Why?" Vincent turned to look at her in the dim interior of the car, illuminated only by passing streetlights. "Because you're working yourself to exhaustion for people you love. Because you carry more weight than anyone should have to carry alone. Because despite everything, you still find the energy to be kind to strangers. Those are rare qualities, worth protecting." Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone colder, maybe. More distant. The first night you came in, I was nervous. Everyone knows your name, knows you're important, knows to be respectful, but nobody really knows who you are." Vincent's jaw tightened slightly. "And who do you think I am?" "I think you're someone who's been hurt and learned to protect yourself by keeping everyone at a distance. I think you're lonely but convinced yourself that loneliness is safer than vulnerability. I think underneath all the control and careful distance, you're someone who wants connection but doesn't know how to accept it anymore." The accuracy of her assessment stunned him into silence. She saw him, really saw him, in a way that no one had in years. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "That's remarkably perceptive. I told you, I was studying psychology. I'm good at reading people." Emma smiled slightly. "Plus, it takes one to know one. You're lonely too?" "Exhausted and lonely. Great combination." She laughed softly. "I moved here with such big dreams. I was going to change the world, help children, make a difference. Instead, I'm just trying to survive each day. My friends have moved away or gotten so busy with their own lives that we barely talk. My family needs me, which I'm grateful for, but it doesn't leave much room for my own life. Most days, the only real conversations I have are with customers at the restaurant." "And with me," Vincent added quietly. "And with you," she agreed. "Which is strange, isn't it? I know so little about you, really. What you do, where you come from, what your life actually looks like beyond these car rides and restaurant conversations. But somehow talking to you feels real, like you're actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak." "I am listening, more carefully than you probably realize." They arrived at her building too quickly. Emma gathered her things but didn't immediately exit the car. "Vincent, can I ask you something? And will you be honest with me?" "I'll try." "What do you actually do? For work, I mean. Everyone treats you like you're important, but you're always alone, always watchful, always careful. What kind of business are you in?" This was the moment. He could lie, keep the walls up, maintain the distance that kept her safe and him uncomplicated. Or he could tell her enough truth to test whether this fragile connection could survive reality. "I manage business interests, real estate, investments, some consulting work, all technically true. I work with people who need discretion, who value privacy. Some of my business operates in gray areas, legal but complicated. I help solve problems that traditional channels can't or won't address." Emma studied him carefully. "Are you telling me you do things that might be considered dangerous?" "I'm telling you that my world isn't simple, that the people I work with and the situations I handle require careful navigation, that there are risks. And the injury? The one I touched that first night? A reminder that those risks are real." Emma nodded slowly, processing this information. "Thank you for being honest. Or at least, as honest as you can be. Does it change things, knowing that my life is complicated, potentially dangerous?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe it should. Logically, I should probably be more cautious. But honestly, you've shown me nothing but kindness and respect. You've listened when I needed someone to listen. You've offered help without demanding anything in return. Those actions speak louder than vague warnings about gray areas and complications. You're very trusting, or very foolish," Emma said with a slight smile. "My mom always said I saw the best in people even when I should be more skeptical. But I'd rather be too trusting than too cynical. At least then I get to experience real connections, even if they come with risks." Vincent felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the careful control he maintained, a crack in the armor he'd spent years perfecting. This woman, this exhausted waitress who worked 3 jobs and carried the weight of her family on her shoulders, was willing to see past the warnings and complications to the person underneath. No one had done that in longer than he could remember. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? For not running away, for seeing me as a person, not just as a position or a warning label, for bringing me ice when I was in pain and pretending not to be." Emma reached across and squeezed his hand, the gesture brief but meaningful. "We all deserve to be seen as people, Vincent, even when we're complicated, maybe especially when we're complicated." She slipped out of the car, and Vincent watched her enter her building, her figure small and tired but somehow resilient. As Thomas drove him home, Vincent stared out at the city lights and acknowledged what he'd been trying to deny for weeks. He was falling for her. Despite every logical reason not to, despite the complications and dangers, despite the fundamental incompatibility of their worlds, he was falling. And for the first time in 15 years, he wasn't sure whether to protect himself from that fall or let himself experience it fully. Back in his penthouse, Vincent made one more phone call to his most trusted associate, Robert, who handled sensitive matters with discretion. "Robert, I need you to do something for me." Quietly. "A young woman named Emma Chen lives in Queens. I need to know if anyone's paying attention to her. Anyone from our world or competing interests. Just watch. Don't interfere. Don't make contact. Just make sure she's safe. This is unusual, Vincent. Personal protection detail? Call it preventive caution. She important to you?" Vincent paused, then answered honestly. "Yes. She's becoming important, which means she might become a target if people figure that out. I need to know she's safe. Consider it done. Discreet surveillance, no contact." After hanging up, Vincent poured himself a drink and stood at his window, looking out over Manhattan. Somewhere out in Queens, Emma was probably getting ready for bed, probably exhausted, probably already thinking about the next day's challenges. And he was standing here, a man who had built an empire on calculated decisions and careful control, completely undone by gentle kindness and honest conversation. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Emma. Maria gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you again. For everything. For listening. For the doctor referral. For the rides. For treating me like a person, not just a waitress. It means more than you know. Sleep well, Vincent." He stared at the message for a long time, then typed a response. "Thank you for letting me be someone other than who everyone expects me to be. That means more than you know. Sleep well, Emma." 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing. Then, "Maybe we're both getting to be more ourselves by being around each other. That's a rare gift." Vincent smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that felt foreign on his face but entirely natural in that moment. "Very rare," he typed back, "and valuable. Good night, Vincent." "Good night, Emma." He set down his phone and returned to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. Behind him, the luxurious penthouse felt emptier than usual. In front of him, the city sprawled out in all its complicated beauty, and somewhere in that vast urban landscape, a tired waitress who saw past his defenses was falling asleep, probably wondering what she was getting herself into. Vincent wondered the same thing, but for the first time in years he wasn't sure he cared about the answer. Some things, some people, were worth the risk, worth the complications, worth the vulnerability. Emma Chen was becoming one of those things. And Vincent Russo, who had built his life on certainty and control, found himself stepping into uncertainty with something that felt surprisingly close to hope. The morning after their text exchange, Vincent woke to a call from Robert. "We have a situation." Robert's voice was carefully neutral, which meant the situation was serious. Vincent sat up immediately, the pleasant fog of sleep evaporating. "What kind of situation?" "The Castellano family. They've noticed your interest in the waitress. Word is spreading that you're spending time at Carmelo's, always requesting the same server, giving her rides home. People are starting to ask questions." Vincent's jaw clenched. This was exactly what he'd feared, his attention drawing unwanted scrutiny to Emma. "What kind of questions?" "The usual. Who is she? What does she mean to you? Is she a weakness that can be exploited?" "So far, it's just talk. But you know how quickly talk can become action in our world. Double the surveillance. I want someone watching her building, someone near the restaurant, someone tracking any unusual activity in her orbit, but keep it invisible. She can't know she's being watched. Vincent, with all respect, maybe the better solution is to create distance. Stop going to the restaurant, stop the rides. Let the interest die down naturally. No. The word came out harder than Vincent intended. I'm not abandoning her because people are gossiping. Just keep her safe. That's all I'm asking. Robert was quiet for a moment. You're really attached to this girl. She's not a girl. She's a woman. And yes, I am. Which is why I need to know she's protected. Understood. I'll tighten security. But Vincent, you need to be careful. Getting emotionally involved makes you vulnerable. We both know what happened to— Don't, Vincent interrupted sharply. Don't bring up the past. This is different. Is it? Or are you repeating patterns? After ending the call, Vincent sat on the edge of his bed, conflict warring inside him. Robert was right, in a way. Years ago, he'd cared about someone, deeply, and that person had been used against him. The details didn't matter now. What mattered was the lesson. Care makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability gets people hurt. But Emma wasn't just someone he cared about. She was someone who saw him as human, who brought him ice when he was in pain, who spoke to him with honest directness. The thought of walking away from that, of letting fear dictate his choices, felt like a different kind of defeat. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Good morning. My mom called the doctor's office. They got her in for tomorrow afternoon. I can't believe it. She's been trying to get an appointment with a good specialist for months. Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but thank you. Vincent typed back. I'm glad he could see her. Let me know how it goes. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, would you want to meet her? My mom, I mean. She keeps asking about the friend who helped us. No pressure, obviously, I know you're busy. Meet her mother. That was a significant step, one that moved them from friendly acquaintances to something more defined, more real. It also meant exposing himself further, letting someone else into his carefully controlled world. I'd like that, he typed before he could overthink it. When works for you? Really? Okay, maybe this weekend? Sunday afternoon? We usually have tea together. Very casual, nothing fancy. Sunday afternoon sounds perfect. Just tell me when and where. He could almost feel her surprise through the phone. You're sure? It's really okay if this is too much. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Emma, I want to meet your mother. I want to be part of your life, not just someone you see at the restaurant. A longer pause this time. Then, that's really sweet. Okay, Sunday at 2 p.m. I'll send you the address. I'll be there. Vincent set down his phone and realized he was nervous. Actually nervous. When was the last time he'd been nervous about meeting someone? He faced down rival businessmen, negotiated deals worth millions, managed complex operations across the city. But the thought of having tea with Emma's mother made his palms sweat. Because it mattered. She mattered. And he desperately didn't want to disappoint her or her family. The week passed in a strange rhythm. Vincent continued his regular business. Meetings, negotiations, problem-solving for the various operations under his purview. But his mind kept drifting to Sunday, to Emma, to the way his carefully ordered world was shifting around this unexpected connection. On Wednesday, Dr. Chen called personally. Vincent, I saw Mrs. Chen today, Emma's mother. How is she? The rheumatoid arthritis is advanced, but manageable with the right treatment protocol. Her current medications were outdated. There are much better options available now. I've started her on a new regimen that should significantly reduce inflammation and pain within a few weeks. That's good news. It is. But Vincent, that woman has been suffering unnecessarily for over a year because she couldn't afford proper specialist care. The community health center she was going to, they're doing their best with limited resources, but she needed more comprehensive treatment. Can you help her? I already am. I've set up a treatment plan, and I'm bringing in a physical therapist who specializes in arthritis patients. Between the medication adjustments and targeted therapy, we should see significant improvement. What's the cost? For Mrs. Chen? Nothing. Consider it a professional courtesy. Dr. Chen paused. Though between us, I know you'll find a way to compensate me appropriately. You always do. Send the bills to my office. All of them, medications, therapy, follow-up appointments, and Raymond? Thank you. You're welcome. And Vincent, that daughter of hers is remarkable. While Mrs. Chen was in the exam room, Emma asked intelligent questions, took detailed notes, wanted to understand every aspect of the treatment plan. She's completely devoted to her mother's well-being. You're spending time with good people. After hanging up, Vincent felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with business success or strategic victories. He'd made a tangible difference in Emma's life, had eased a burden she'd been carrying. That meant something. Thursday evening, Vincent returned to Carmelo's. Emma's face lit up when she saw him, a genuine smile that made her tired features beautiful. "Vincent, I wasn't expecting you tonight. I had some free time. Thought I'd have dinner." She led him to his usual table, and once he was settled, she lingered for a moment. "I don't even know how to thank you properly. My mom came home from the doctor's appointment crying, happy tears. She said Dr. Chen was the first specialist who really listened to her, who treated her like a person instead of just another patient. And the treatment plan he outlined, it's exactly what she needed. I'm glad he could help. It's more than help, Vincent. It's life-changing." She's already feeling more hopeful, more like herself. Emma's eyes were bright with emotion. "You did that. You made one phone call and changed everything for her. I just made an introduction. Dr. Chen did the real work. Don't diminish what you did, please." Emma reached out and briefly squeezed his hand. "You've been so kind to us, to me. I keep waiting for the catch, for the moment when you reveal what you want in return. There is no catch. I don't want anything except—" Vincent paused, choosing his words carefully. "Except to see you happy. To know that I made your life a little easier. That's enough." Emma studied him with those perceptive dark eyes. "You're a complicated man, Vincent Russo. I've been told that before. It wasn't a criticism, just an observation." She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I'm actually really nervous about Sunday, about you meeting my mom." "Why? Worried I won't pass inspection?" "Worried she'll like you too much and start planning a wedding," Emma said with a laugh. "She's been alone for a long time since my dad passed. She wants me to be happy, to have someone in my life. If she sees that that you're you, she's going to have expectations I'm not sure we're ready for." "What are we ready for?" Vincent asked quietly. Emma met his gaze directly. "I don't know, but I want to find out. Is that okay?" "That's more than okay." The rest of the evening passed pleasantly. They talked between her duties, and Vincent found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did anywhere else. With Emma, he didn't have to perform, didn't have to maintain the careful facade of control and power. He could just be himself, complicated, scarred, uncertain, but genuine. Friday brought unwelcome news. Robert called with an update on the surveillance. "The Castellanos are making moves. Nothing direct yet, but they're asking around about Emma, her background, her family, where she works beyond the restaurant. They're gathering information." "Why? What's their interest?" "Standard intelligence gathering. They know you care about her, so they're treating her as a potential pressure point. If they ever need leverage against you, they want to know where your vulnerabilities are." Vincent's hand clenched around the phone. "She's not a pressure point. She's off limits. You need to make that clear, publicly. Otherwise, they'll keep testing boundaries. Set up a meeting tomorrow, neutral location. I'll talk to Marco Castellano directly." "Are you sure that's wise?" "It confirms that she matters to you. They already know she matters. Pretending otherwise won't protect her. But making it clear that touching her means war, that might." The meeting was arranged for Saturday afternoon at a quiet cafe in Little Italy, one of the few truly neutral spaces in the city. Vincent arrived exactly on time, dressed impeccably, his demeanor calm, but his message clear in every line of his body. Marco Castellano was already there, a man in his 50s with silver hair and shrewd eyes. They'd known each other for 20 years, sometimes as allies, sometimes as competitors, always with mutual respect. "Vincent, this must be important for you to request a face-to-face." "It is. I'll be direct. I understand your people have been asking questions about Emma Chen." Marco's expression didn't change. "We gather information on people of interest. Standard practice. You know this. She's not people of interest. She's off-limits. Completely. Off-limits is a strong term. I'm using it intentionally. She's a civilian, Marco. She has nothing to do with our business, our world, our conflicts. She's innocent in every sense of the word, and I'm making it clear publicly and unambiguously that anyone who approaches her, threatens her, or uses her as leverage against me will face immediate and severe consequences." Marco leaned back, studying Vincent carefully. "You're willing to go to war over a waitress? I'm willing to go to war over the principle that innocent people stay innocent." "Yes, that's surprisingly honorable of you. Also potentially foolish, perhaps. But it's non-negotiable." Marco was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Understood. I'll spread the word. Emma Chen is untouchable, protected status. Anyone who violates that answers to you directly, and by extension, creates a problem with my family as well. Vincent felt tension release from his shoulders. I appreciate that. But Vincent, understand what you're doing. By publicly claiming her as protected, you're also publicly claiming her as important to you. That makes her valuable in ways that go beyond immediate threats. If she becomes widely known as someone you care about, there will always be people looking for angles, for ways to use that connection. I know. But the alternative, pretending she doesn't matter while watching her from a distance, that's not acceptable either. At least this way, she has explicit protection. You're changing, old friend. Becoming softer. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally remembering what it's like to care about someone beyond strategic value. Marco smiled slightly. Love makes fools of us all, but it also makes us human. Good luck with it. They shook hands and parted ways. The agreement made. Emma was now formally under Vincent's protection, which meant she was also formally recognized as important to him. There was no going back from that. Sunday arrived with clear skies and unseasonably warm weather for late November. Vincent dressed carefully. Nice slacks, a sweater, nothing too formal or intimidating. He wanted to appear approachable, not like the businessman Emma's mother might be intimidated by. He arrived at Emma's building at exactly 2 o'clock, carrying flowers. Simple daisies, nothing ostentatious, and a box of premium tea he'd had specially ordered from a shop in Chinatown. Emma buzzed him up, and he climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, his heart beating faster than it had any right to. When she opened the door, she was smiling, dressed casually in jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes seem even darker. You brought gifts. You didn't have to do that. My mother raised me to never arrive empty-handed. The apartment was small but immaculately kept. The furniture was old but well-maintained. And everywhere Vincent looked, there were signs of care. Fresh flowers in a vase, family photos arranged on shelves, hand-embroidered pillows that showed someone's artistic touch. Mom, this is Vincent. Vincent, this is my mother, Lin Chen. Lin Chen was a small woman, probably in her early 60s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her hands showed the telltale swelling of arthritis, but her eyes were sharp and kind. She stood with some difficulty, and Vincent immediately moved to help her settle back into her chair. Mrs. Chen, it's an honor to meet you. Please, don't stand on my account. Such manners, Lin said with a smile, her English accented but clear. Emma told me you were polite. She didn't mention you were handsome. Mom. Emma's cheeks flushed. Vincent laughed, genuinely amused. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Emma told me you were kind. She didn't mention you were direct. At my age, being direct saves time. Lin gestured to the chair across from her. Sit, sit. Emma made tea. Real tea, not the American bags. As they settled around the small coffee table, Emma poured tea into delicate porcelain cups. The atmosphere was warm, comfortable, and Vincent found himself relaxing despite his earlier nervousness. Dr. Chen is wonderful, Lin said, her voice full of gratitude. He explained everything so clearly, and already I feel the new medicine working. My hands hurt less. I painted yesterday. First time in months I could hold the brush steady. That's wonderful news. Dr. Chen mentioned you were an artist. Lin's face brightened. Before the arthritis, yes. Watercolors mostly. Nothing professional. Just for joy. Emma inherited my eye for color, but not my patience for painting. I inherited your stubbornness instead, Emma said with affection. That too, Lin agreed with a laugh. They talked easily, the conversation flowing naturally from topic to topic. Lin asked about Vincent's family, and he found himself sharing stories about his mother and sisters, memories he rarely discussed with anyone. She told him about immigrating from China 30 years ago, about building a life in America, about losing her husband to cancer when Emma was just 16. Emma took care of all of us, Lin said softly. She was still a child, but she became an adult overnight. Handled everything, her father's final weeks, the funeral arrangements, helping her brother cope, all while maintaining perfect grades in school. Mom, that's enough, Emma said, clearly embarrassed. It's true. You've always been strong. Too strong sometimes. You carry everyone else's burdens and forget to set them down. Vincent caught Emma's eye and saw the vulnerability there, the weight of being strong, of being needed, of never allowing herself to be weak. Strength runs in your family, Vincent said gently. But even the strong deserve support. Lin studied him with those shrewd eyes. Emma says you've been very kind to her, giving her rides home, helping with doctor appointments. Why? The question was direct but not unkind. She was a mother, protecting her daughter, wanting to understand his intentions. Because she was kind to me first, Vincent answered honestly. And because in a world that often feels cold and calculated, your daughter's warmth and genuine care reminded me what it's like to be treated as a person, not a position. And what is your position, Mr. Russo? Emma says you're in business, but she's vague on details. Vincent had known this question would come. He glanced at Emma, who was watching him carefully, then back to Lynn. I manage various business interests. Some of them operate in complicated areas, legal but not always conventional. I work with people who need discretion and who value privacy. It means my life sometimes involves risk, and the people close to me can become targets for those risks. It was the most honest he could be without explicitly detailing his world. Lynn nodded slowly, processing this information. You're warning me that knowing you could be dangerous for my daughter. I'm being honest about the realities of my life. I would never want Emma to be in danger because of me. But you keep coming to see her. Keep spending time with her. If it's so dangerous, why not stay away? It was the question Vincent had been asking himself for weeks. He looked at Emma, at her mother, at this small warm apartment that represented everything his world wasn't. Simple, honest, filled with uncomplicated love. Because staying away feels like a different kind of danger. The danger of never experiencing genuine connection, of never allowing myself to care about someone, of building walls so high that I forget what it's like to be human. He paused. Your daughter makes me want to be better than I've been. That's worth some risk. Lynn was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and patted Vincent's hand, a gesture so maternal, so accepting, that he felt emotion tighten in his throat. My Emma has good instincts about people. If she trusts you, then I trust her judgment, but Mr. Russo, if you hurt my daughter, doctor referrals won't save you. Mother's protection is fiercer than any business arrangement. Vincent smiled, appreciating her directness. I wouldn't expect anything less, and I have no intention of hurting her. The afternoon continued pleasantly. Lynn showed him some of her paintings, which were genuinely beautiful. Delicate watercolors of landscapes and flowers that captured light and shadow with remarkable skill. Emma talked about her work at the school, the children she taught, the small victories that made the exhaustion worthwhile. As the light began to fade outside, Vincent realized he'd been there for nearly 4 hours. 4 hours that had felt like minutes, filled with easy conversation and genuine connection. When he finally prepared to leave, Lynn pulled Emma aside, not subtly, leaving Vincent standing awkwardly by the door. He's good, he heard Lynn whisper in Mandarin, probably assuming he wouldn't understand. Polite, respectful, and he looks at you like you're precious. That's rare. It's complicated, Mom, Emma responded in the same language. Love is always complicated. That doesn't make it wrong. Emma returned, her cheeks slightly flushed. Mom approves. Obviously. I'm honored. Your mother is remarkable. As they walked down the stairs together, Emma said quietly, Thank you for being so honest with her. About the risks, I mean. You could have avoided that conversation. I could have, but she deserved the truth. You both do. Outside, Thomas was waiting with the car. Before Vincent could open the door, Emma caught his arm. Vincent, I need to say something. These past few weeks, getting to know you, spending time with you, it's been wonderful, but I'm also scared. Scared of getting hurt. Scared of getting in too deep with someone whose world I don't fully understand. Scared of what happens when reality catches up with this, whatever this is between us. Vincent turned to face her fully. I'm scared too, probably more than you realize, because I haven't let myself care about someone in a very long time, and caring makes you vulnerable. But Emma, being around you makes me feel like a better version of myself. That's worth being scared for. What if it's not enough? What if the complications overwhelm the connection? Then we'll face that when it comes. But right now, in this moment, I want to keep trying. Do you? Emma looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting the streetlights. Then slowly, she nodded. Yes, I want to keep trying. Vincent reached out and gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. It was the most intimate gesture they'd shared, and he felt her lean into his touch. Then that's what we'll do, one day at a time. No promises except honesty. No guarantees except that I'll always be straight with you about the risks and realities. That's all I can ask for. They stood like that for a moment. Two people from completely different worlds, finding unexpected common ground in vulnerability and hope. Finally, Emma stepped back. I should go back up. Mom will be watching from the window making commentary in Mandarin. Vincent laughed. I understood what she said, by the way. About me looking at you like you're precious. Emma's eyes widened. You speak Mandarin? Enough to get by. My old neighborhood in Brooklyn was very diverse. You pick things up. Oh God. She's going to be mortified. Don't be. She was right. You are precious. Emma's breath caught slightly. Then she smiled, a beautiful open smile that made Vincent's chest tight. Good night, Vincent. Good night, Emma. He watched her enter the building, then climbed into the car. As Thomas drove him home, Vincent felt both elated and terrified. He'd crossed another line today, integrated himself further into Emma's life, made himself more vulnerable to the connection between them. But sitting in Lin Chen's small apartment, drinking tea and talking about art and family and life, that had felt more real than anything in his world had felt in years. His phone rang. Robert's name appeared on the screen. Tell me it's good news. Vincent answered. Mixed news. The word is out. Emma Chen is protected. Most people are respecting that, but Vincent, there's chatter about a new player in town. Someone from Philadelphia, looking to expand territory. They might not respect old agreements. Vincent's jaw tightened. Who? We're still gathering intelligence. But they've been asking questions, making inquiries. They don't know the rules yet. Then teach them, quickly, before they make a mistake that forces my hand. Understood. But Vincent, maybe it's time to have a direct conversation with Emma about exactly what being connected to you means. She needs to understand the full picture. Vincent looked out at the city passing by, the lights blurring together. Robert was right. Emma deserved to know everything. Not vague warnings about risk and complications, but concrete details about his world and the dangers it contained. It would probably scare her away. Most people, when confronted with the reality of his life, chose distance and safety. He couldn't blame them, but he owed her the truth, even if it cost him the best thing that had happened to him in years. Set up security protocols, Vincent said finally. Increase surveillance on her building, her route to work, the restaurant. I want to know about any unusual activity immediately. Already done. But Vincent, security only goes so far. The best protection is distance. I know, but I can't seem to make myself choose that option. Then let's hope your instincts are right and this works out better than last time. Vincent hung up, his mind already planning the conversation he needed to have with Emma. The honest, complete conversation about who he really was and what being with him really meant. It might end everything between them. But secrets and half-truths would definitely end it eventually. At least honesty gave them a chance, however small, of building something real. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom won't stop talking about you. I think you made a permanent impression. Thank you for today, for being exactly who you are. Vincent stared at the message, feeling the weight of what was coming. The moment when he'd have to reveal all the parts of himself he'd been carefully concealing. He typed back, Can we talk soon? Really talk. About everything. 3 dots appeared then. That sounds serious. It is. You deserve the full truth. About me, about my world, about what being in my life actually means. A longer pause this time. Then, okay. When? Tomorrow? After your shift? We can go somewhere private. Your place? Vincent hesitated. Bringing her to his penthouse meant showing her the extent of his wealth, the luxury that represented his success and everything that success had cost him. But it also meant complete privacy for a difficult conversation. Yes, my place. If you're comfortable with that. I trust you, Vincent. Tomorrow then, we'll talk. He set down his phone and looked out at the glittering city, at the empire he'd built from nothing, at the life he'd created that was successful and powerful and profoundly lonely. Tomorrow, he would show Emma all of it, the luxury and the emptiness, the power and the isolation, the success and the cost. He would give her every reason to walk away while secretly hoping she'd choose to stay. Because for the first time in 15 years, Vincent Russo wanted something more than control and power. He wanted connection. He wanted honesty. He wanted love. And tomorrow he'd find out if those wants were enough to bridge the vast distance between their worlds. The penthouse was exactly what Emma expected, and nothing like she imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city lights spreading out like stars. Modern furniture, expensive art, everything precise and controlled, but it also felt empty. A beautiful space without warmth, without life. Vincent stood by the window, his posture tense. Thank you for coming. You said we needed to talk, about everything. Emma set down her coat, trying to calm her racing heart. I'm listening. He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw vulnerability she'd never witnessed before. I haven't been completely honest with you about what I do. Not lies, but omissions. You deserve the full truth. Okay, tell me. Vincent took a breath. My business. It's not conventional. I manage operations that exist in gray areas. Protection services, dispute resolution, territory management. Some people would call it organized business. Others would use harsher terms. I help people solve problems that can't be solved through traditional channels, and I do it by maintaining influence and control. Emma processed this carefully. You're telling me you're involved in things that might be considered illegal? I'm telling you I operate in spaces where legality is complicated. I don't hurt innocent people. I have rules, boundaries. But yes, my world involves risks and compromises that most people never have to consider. And the injury? The scar I touched? A reminder that my world isn't safe, that the choices I've made have consequences. Vincent's jaw tightened. People have used those I care about against me before. It's why I keep everyone at distance. Why I've been alone for so long. Emma walked closer to him. But you're not keeping me at distance anymore. Why? Because you touched my wound and showed me gentleness I'd forgotten existed. Because you see me as human, not as a position or a threat. Because being around you reminds me who I was before the world hardened me. He met her eyes. Because I'm falling in love with you. And that terrifies me more than any business risk ever has. Emma's breath caught. Vincent, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know you should probably run from this, from me, from everything my life represents. But I needed you to know the truth, all of it, so you can make an informed choice. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing. Everything he was telling her confirmed suspicions she'd had but never wanted to fully acknowledge. His world was dangerous, complicated, morally ambiguous. Being with him meant accepting risks she'd never faced before. But looking at him now, vulnerable, honest, offering her the truth despite knowing it might drive her away, she saw the man beneath the reputation, the man who brought her ice, who helped her mother, who listened when she was overwhelmed, the man who was choosing honesty over self-protection. I'm scared, she admitted finally. Scared of getting hurt, scared of this world I don't understand, scared of loving someone whose life involves dangers I can't control. You should be. Fear is rational. But I'm also tired of letting fear make my decisions. Emma stepped closer, reaching up to touch his face gently. You asked me once if I wanted to keep trying. I said yes then, and I'm saying yes now, even knowing the full truth. Emma, you need to understand what you're accepting. There will always be risks. People who might see you as leverage. Situations where I can't fully protect you despite my best efforts. A life that requires constant vigilance. I know, and I'm choosing it anyway. Choosing you. She smiled softly. You said I make you want to be better. You make me want to be braver, to stop just surviving and start actually living. Vincent pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with a tenderness that contradicted everything about his reputation. I don't deserve you. Maybe not, but you have me anyway. They stood like that, holding each other while the city sparkled below them. Two people from different worlds finding unexpected connection in honesty and vulnerability. So, what happens now? Emma asked quietly. Now we figure it out together, one day at a time, with honesty, with caution, but also with hope. Vincent pulled back to look at her. And I promise you this. I will do everything in my power to keep you safe, to make sure choosing me doesn't destroy the beautiful life you're building. And I promise to be patient with your world, to trust you, and to remind you, whenever you forget, that you're human and deserving of gentleness. Vincent smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his face. No one's ever been this gentle with me. Then it's about time someone was. He kissed her then, softly at first, then deeper, a kiss that held all the vulnerability and hope and fear they both carried. When they finally broke apart, Emma was smiling. My mother is going to be insufferable about this. She knew before I did. Mothers usually do. Vincent laughed quietly. She told me, in Mandarin, that I look at you like you're precious. You do. And you are too. Precious and complicated and worth the risk. They moved to the couch and Emma curled against his side, her head on his chest where she could hear his heartbeat. It felt right, being here with him, despite all the logical reasons it shouldn't. Tell me about your family, she said softly. The real stories, not the careful versions you share with everyone else. And he did. Vincent talked about his mother's strength after his father died, about his sisters who built normal lives away from his world, about the boy he'd been who wanted to protect everyone and ended up building walls instead. Emma shared her own stories, about her father's final days, about the weight of responsibility she'd carried since 16, about dreams deferred, but not abandoned. They talked until dawn began painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, two people choosing vulnerability over safety, connection over isolation. Outside the window, the city awakened to another day. Somewhere in that vast urban landscape, challenges awaited, complications and risks that came with their different worlds colliding. But inside the penthouse, wrapped in each other's arms, Vincent and Emma had found something rare and precious, a connection built on honesty, strengthened by acceptance, and sustained by the simple revolutionary act of being gentle with each other's wounds. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better, a real beginning with all its imperfections and uncertainties and possibilities. And for two people who had spent so long being strong alone, being strong together felt like coming home. 3 months later, Emma still worked at Carmelo's, but only 3 nights a week. Vincent had quietly arranged funding for her graduate program, presented as a scholarship to avoid her pride, and she was back in school pursuing her dream of becoming a child psychologist. Her mother's arthritis was manageable now, her brother had secured additional academic support, and Emma had learned to accept help without feeling like she was failing. Vincent was still Vincent, powerful, strategic, operating in gray areas. But he smiled more now, laughed more easily, and had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness but courage. They were building something together, not perfect, not simple, but real and growing stronger each day. Because sometimes the gentlest touch can heal the deepest wounds, and sometimes choosing love despite the risks is the bravest thing we can do.